We'll continue on the road. Continue.
Okay. All right, Mr. Wiltshire, Mr. Pierce, good afternoon to you. Thank you for your patience once again. And thank you for accommodating Grace. That allows you to come here 3, 4, 5 times, even though we've had 1 or 2 deferrals. Thank you very much for that. It is our intention not to keep you overly long today. So if you can make your answers, Mr. Wiltshire, as concise as possible, but as clear as possible. Don't want to rush you. And so we may have efficient use of the time of the meeting today. I'm advised by the Deputy Clerk, Mr. Wiltshire, that you're continuing on the oath. Just want to draw that to your attention, and we'll start with Minister Jordan today.
Thank you very much, Chair. My question speaks a little bit to one that I've asked before. So the broader question is, and it comes from a financial perspective, on what basis was decisions of the board made? Like I said, I'm asking in relation to information generally, but financial information in particular. Did the board of the Transport Board during your tenure make decisions, management decisions, board decisions based on financial information? One, and secondly, how often was financial information provided to the board by the persons in management who were responsible for providing that information? So the first one is, it has to do with how was financial information used by the board, if at all, in making decisions that a board would need to make? And then secondly, how often did you receive financial information from the management of the board?
Quite frankly, in terms of financial information, the Transport Board was always in the right. So we had to use a little common sense. We had to chart the rough waters, and at the end of the day, we would see what little money we had to use it to the best of our ability, because we were deep in the red, and we had to wait long on government to provide subventions. So when subventions came in, they were mainly used to pay off creditors. So we didn't have much at our disposal. And in fact, in some instances, the Transport Board didn't even have money to buy printed ink and paper. That was how bad it was. So every time we had a board meeting, we were here, we owe X, Y, Z, and we need to have X, Y, Z paid or whatever. I mean, when it comes to parts for the buses, at the end of the day, Simpson Motors, for example, which was owed millions, they stopped giving us credit. So we didn't have any leverage as such. If we had lots of money, then we'd be able to make rational decisions. But quite frankly, it was difficult during my tenure.
So but I guess you'll tell me a little bit later in terms of frequency of the financial information, but based on what you said just now, the decisions were made based on inflow, what cash was available, or what little cash was available, and who you owed. Yes. Were any decisions made further to the expenses? So you have little money, and little's coming from the government. Mm-hmm. Did the board interface with management to try to work through how to create money in terms of other sources of income, how to reduce expenditure? Any of that analysis or assessment was done by the board, recognizing that money was so scarce?
I think that was the main purpose why the special project was set up, to save money, because we were spending thousands of dollars in respect of transmissions, repairs, and we brought in the consultant, and he started doing things which saved the corporation, I think at the end of his report, about $4-point-something million in savings, because he was repairing starters. A starter at the time was about $2,600, and he brought in a grower, and he trained some youngsters to repair starters, and it cost only $200 to get the brushes and that kind of thing. So in the past, if a bus had a problem with a starter, they would take it off, put it in the yard, and get a new one. So that was a substantial saving there. In addition to that, he was bringing in parts from overseas at a reduced price. I remember we went down to Brazil, and we had parts cut in some cases by more than half. And then we set up an emergency fund in case if a bus had broken down and you needed parts urgently. You could send off an email, and you could get up to 10,000 US in parts, so long as they were able to be sent by FedEx. And when you compare the local provider, I mean, that was substantial savings. And that was one of the remits of Bartholomew, the specialist, the consultant, sorry. He was tasked with getting parts at a cheaper rate, or reorganizing the quality assurance department, etc.
Sorry, how often did you get financial information from management of the board?
Financial information would come in occasionally. Well, the FC would bring in information, but nothing really that you can speak of in terms of getting funds available. It's always in the right, you know. Her analysis, you get a board meeting, she will tell you how many creditors that we have to pay. If we don't have any money, you can't do this, you can't do that. So
the gist of board meetings revolved around how little money there was and how many people you had to pay?
more or less, in terms of finances.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Minister Jordan. Minister Husbands?
Thank you, Chair. I trust you can hear me fairly well, yes? Okay, thank you again for coming. Minister Jordan had just shared about the issue of financial information, proper financial information in order to guide decisions that were made by the board. And you mentioned about a visit to Brazil to be able to source cheaper parts for the board back in 2017.
That's right.
I believe Mr. Bartholomew had submitted the documentation with the cost of parts and a comparison on the cost of parts and the savings. The question I wanted to ask was the parts that you were getting from APCO, the pricing that you have in that document.
Pardon me? The price from APCO?
The prices that are listed there from APCO, those prices, did those include shipping and duty, etc.?
No. Yeah. That's what he was offering to us. And there'll be enough savings when you ship them as well as the costs.
Well, my concern there would be how could you make a comparison between one item that would obviously have the cost of shipping and duty from a local supplier with a cost that did not include duty and shipping, etc., from an overseas supplier. I'm not clear how you could make a judgment on the savings.
I don't think that I'm speaking subject to correction. I think when parts came in, they would have been
Duty-free? Okay.
When, excuse me. If you look at
And the shipping
Appendix
cost?
2, Appendix 2, you
Yeah.
have a 1997 turbo Charger, and the price was $3,477.99. And you are getting the same Charger for $300. So it means therefore,
But that did not include your shipping costs?
yeah, but shipping costs can't come up to $3,000.
No, I agree. My concern is the basis on which the board makes decisions, that in good management practice, you have to compare apples with apples. And in order to see what are the potential savings, you would have needed to have your shipping costs or any other costs associated with the imported product so that you could make a clear judgment as to the degree of savings. I'm sure there were savings, but the degree would be overstated if you hadn't included the cost of shipping to bring in the item. That was my
Well,
concern with
Well,
the data.
quite frankly,
because the data was startling.
what I'm saying that when we went and we negotiated for these parts, we did not, or the transport board rather than we, did not have the cash to bring in a large number of these parts. So therefore, we would not have been in a position to give you 100% accuracy, because remember it was in 2017 and not much money was floating around. So we did not have that much.
Mr. Wiltshire, I find it really, really strange
That,
because this was the same situation with the reason that was given on the transmissions, purchasing a transmission for $5,000 versus one for $24,000. And no, we have it here with the other parts, that lack of funds was a problem. Faced with a situation like this, in terms of the disparity of costings, and faced with the fact that because of the high expense of the operations of the transport board, that made it not viable as an operation, as the chairman or the general manager, I would have gone straight to government and said, look, this is the difference. If we can make the switch here, this is what we could save annually, and we were in a better position to be able to have a viable transport board, because two problems have emerged. You're paying more. The buses are still breaking down. And once they're breaking down, you cannot make your revenue. But at the same time, your expenditure is 10 times, 4 times, 15 times higher than if you can bring in the item. In a situation like that, I would have had to make a case for a sum that would help me to make that transition. It appears to me that good decision-making was not happening in relation to the care for government's resources and the provision of a good transport service for the Barbadian public.
well, that is rather subjective, because what sense would it make going to the government when the government is telling you they don't have any money and you have to find ways of reducing costs? So I don't agree with you making that kind of statement that we were not looking out for the best interest of the Barbadian public.
Mr.
That's what I'm
Wiltshire,
saying.
what you're saying would make sense if you were never going to pay the Barbadian suppliers. And I have not heard anything in these proceedings to suggest that you were going to get things free from either of these suppliers So at some point in time, you would have had to pay these prices. The money would have had to have been found. And my position is that as you would have to find the money for 3-4 times the cost, it would have been better to make a transition and bring them in at the much lower price from the 2 overseas suppliers in order to create a viable service to get your buses on the road, and then your buses could make revenue, because a bus sitting down in a workshop cannot generate revenue.
I think there's an issue for the FC to deal with that, not me.
I want to put it to you
Not where to put it me, because I'm
that
not going
as
down
a
that
chairman
road.
of the board, the responsibility of the board is to ensure that there's proper running and proper functioning, because the FC, the general manager, they all report to the board. And the board's responsibility is when things are not functioning as well as they should, that would need to be dealt with and brought to the attention of the management.
May I inform you that we had a meeting, as well as the general manager, with the Ministry of Finance, and all that we were getting would have been promises, and then a long time afterwards, a little trip will come, and then you have to make do with what you have. And that's what I'm saying. We cannot get blood out of stone. If we are not getting money, and as much as we are going to tell them, as what you said, like what you said, that we are not getting resources, what can we do? So you are talking from an ideal situation. That's what I'm saying.
I don't agree with you from a management perspective.
Well, you're in management, not me. I'm only telling you what happened, and that as far as I know.
I don't think the Barbadian public was really very well served by these decisions that were taken. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Senator Snow.
Mr. Wiltshire,
Yes, sir.
just to follow up on questions that were raised both by Minister Jordan and Minister Husbands. I'm just wondering how comfortable you felt, and when I say you would, say you as chairman, and of course as the board, the other board members, in making decisions in the absence of any type of financial information. I heard you mention at the beginning that the transport board was always in the red. So, didn't seem to me that having the financial information was too important to the board. But I would have thought that more than ever, having that sort of financial information, management accounts, would have been key to making the board's decision making. For example, you yourself mentioned in earlier testimony, not today but previously, that you weren't comfortable with some information that was given to you by the financial controller. So I'm trying to understand how comfortable were you in managing in that situation?
I don't think that, given the circumstances which we found ourselves in, that we were totally comfortable, because we had certain plans, and plans dictate that you must have money for them to come to fruition. So when you have certain plans and you don't have any money, whatever little that comes in, you then would deal with it, with the situation.
So what was the board doing to try to get the financial controller and the general manager to provide that type of information that would have been key for your decision-making process?
What did the board do? Are you
Yeah.
asking me?
Yeah.
Well, as far as I am aware, we had I think it was a committee in finance, and they would report, that committee would report to us, but at the end of the day, there wasn't much we could do. We may have good ideas, but basically, as I am telling you, if you did not get the governmental support, then you are out to sea. And as many plans that you may have, you're not getting support from the government in terms of finances, then you are out to sea.
Well, let me ask you a question. Did the board ever put together a strategic plan, set of budgets or anything that you could sit down, perhaps with the ministry itself, and point out to them the dire situation in which the transport board was, and come up with some plan for putting it on a much better financial operating footing?
I don't think so. I think that was done. Any plan would have been done by the general manager and the FC, then report to us. But it was always there.
All right. Okay. If on hindsight, and we know that, of course, hindsight is 2020. But if you had to do it again? Could you tell us what some of these things that you would do, or maybe anything that you think you would want to do differently or to see implemented for smoother running of the board?
Quite frankly, I won't want to venture any further than saying what the status quo was. I don't want to go into hindsight.
Thank you, Senator Nurse. Minister Wolpert? No? Dr. Brown? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two or three short questions. Something that was asked, I believe, the last time we met. Mr. Wiltshire, what did you see your role and function while you were chairman of Transport Board? What was your role and function?
My role was to carry the policy of the government through the minister, and also to ensure as I can possibly can to have a smooth running of the corporation.
I asked that because I've been looking at notes and reading minutes, and you made a number of trips to Miami, on which you submitted claims of invoices on a number of occasions, both in 2016 and 2017. I believe in August 2017, you were challenged by, well, not challenged, the general manager at that time, Mrs. Holder, asked in terms of a request for payment for a trip that you made during the period August the 6th to the 10th, 2017. And it seems as though you were in the habit of making trips to Miami and coincidentally purchasing pieces of equipment for the transport board. Is this part of the implementation of the policy of the government?
It is for the implementation of the project that was for.
So you made trips, you made claims. You were in Miami in January 2017 when you claimed $6,350 on tools. You were in Miami on February 2017. $2,495 was spent on airfare and daily allowance, $1,000 on accommodation, $10,800 on equipment. You were in Miami in March. You were paid $35,340. There was no information as to what this related to, but there was a letter authorizing the bank transfer, and it was signed by 2 senior Transport Board members. In August 2017, there was expense claim for $7,000, of which approximately $2,300 appeared to relate to tools such as a wrench and a bore gauge set. And of note, $1,740 was spent on your airfare, $785 on hotel, $365 on car rental, $1,650 on your personal daily allowances. When asked, you wrote a letter, and I quote, "I was instructed by the Honorable Michael Lashley MP to travel to Miami in order to procure urgently needed tools which were crucial to the mangrove project and to source some parts." But do you agree that a number of these invoices related to purchases from Sears and Staples and Napa Auto Parts, and these all have online shopping, and you could have a telephone call and these things be shipped? Would you agree with that? So why was it necessary for you to embark on all of these trips to Miami, January, February, March, August, and I go back to 2016? But you answered first in terms of why the necessity for you to do these things and to shop at Sears and Staples and Napa. I understand Napa is out of parts, but in terms of the other entities, are you in a position to answer this?
About online shopping?
As a preference to you going up there, the board, in its strained financial situation, having to pay airfares, accommodations, per diem, rental cars, all of these things, just to get these pieces of equipment, which could have been easily purchased online and shipped to the Transport Board.
First, I'm going to ask who is going to pay for them. If the Transport Board does not have the cash, and I pointed out, I think last time, it did not have any money to start the project to buy tools. Therefore, how are you going to get tools through?
So were they paying you back then?
Well, I made it clear that it was a credit card I went there and used. Simple as that.
But then
So
you were
I do not
reimbursed.
understand the question.
But you were reimbursed, weren't you?
I was.
So the Transport couldn't order these things online. That's the point you're making?
That's right. They didn't have a credit card. Credit card only came into existence about December 2016, and it was for $2,500.
In July 2016, there were invoices for $15,169, and you also claim expenses totaling $36,431, which were related to the project at Mangrove. What was this project at Mangrove?
Pardon?
The project at Mangrove, what was that in Inver? The claim that you made in July 2016 for $36,431, it was said to be related to the project at Mangrove,
July.
of which some $20,000 was linked to furniture bought from Pierce Furniture and Furnishings Limited, Pierce.
Not this one here.
I thought he was a distinguished attorney. I didn't know he was into furniture.
Let me make it clear.
Chairman, sir,
I
just wish to make the
Mr. Pierce, I think the question is addressed to Mr. Wiltshire.
Right. let me make it clear.
It was just
To
about the
all
project. What
and
was the project at Mangrove? That was all I was asking.
No,
I
no,
just wanted some
I know
enlightenment about
Pierce
it.
Furniture came up a lot of times in here. And it was said that there were workbenches and that you yourself asked me if I bought a table for $6,000.
Oh, no,
That was
Mr.
last
Chairman.
time. No,
that-
I got to speak to that.
That question came from the chair, Mr. Wiltshire.
Yes, and
He may have intended to ask it, but he didn't get
Yeah,
the
but I'm
opportunity.
gonna get around to it.
I asked it.
yes, because it was very, very demeaning for the FC to come in here and brought in 3 pages. One, an invoice, which I got from Parliament, and you see ticks here. 2, a memo from the general manager asking that this money be paid. And the FC came in here giving the impression that I submitted this invoice, and based on this, the general manager asked her to pay. And that was very unfortunate, and it was untrue. I have the bundle of documents here which was sent down to the FC that said evening. There are about 6 of them, but she removed the front and the back deliberately to mislead the committee, because the general manager did the reconciliation of all the accounts here in red. She also sent down receipts for the said Pierce Furniture, and there were 2. The 2 receipts were for 2 tables each. There were 4 tables, and these had to be built to specification. The legs had to be 4 inches square. They had to be made out of hardwood, so pine was not an option. So either Purple Heart or Green Heart. And the table had to be 2 inches thick. Then it was covered with tin sheet, so that if oil gets on the table, it won't seep through the wood. And there were drains that decided that the oil would run into the drain and into a bucket. The basis of this, and it comes back to Dr. Walker's question, those tables had to be built according to specification. I don't know if he knows anything about carpentry.
All right, Mr. Pierce, those are details which.
But they had to put a bus engine on top of it. They had to withstand the weight.
Yeah, but.
So that's the reason why they were cost $3,100. It all depends on the length as well.
Notwithstanding all of that, I think the variance of position last time we talked about that was that you were suggesting the invoices totaled $6,000, 3 and 3, plus some change.
No,
and the
6 and 6 because the.
Well, that's what we were saying. It was 6 and 6. You were saying 3 and 3.
No, 3 and 3 for each table. There are 2 tables each for invoice, for receipt. 31. Divide 62.58 by 2.
All right, we
Right.
can sort through that, but I think we want to get back to Dr.
Yes.
Walker's.
I simply want to
Specific
know
question.
the project at Mangrove. What exactly did it entail?
I think I had spoken about that before. The project was set up to, Bartholomew, the consultant, was brought in, and he had to remit to raise the number of buses to 200, all things being fair, being favorable. He had to source cheaper parts. He had to reorganize the quality assurance department. And during that time, we had to get tables, tools, etc. So therefore, we could not start the project unless we had tools, we had tables, because the tools were not available in Barbados. And when they were available, they were very expensive. And I pointed out that one of the two items he wanted was a welding plant. I had bought one a year before for $300 and was being sold down here for $2,800. So it was much cheaper to get it from overseas.
Thank you.
Just a couple of questions, Mr. Wiltshire, as quickly as possible. Could we get a copy of the document which you stated just now should be of interest to us? Document from which the former financial controller
Yes, I have it here.
extracting 2 pages at the
She
end.
took off the front and the back, but they were about 5 or 6 pages.
He took off the front and the back. We
That's
need
right.
to have the benefit of a sight of the middle. Copy it first. There's a couple of questions. One of the areas of query for the committee is the whereabouts of a vehicle, BM506. Can you shed any light on that?
BM506? I don't know anything about BM506.
You are not aware of it? You are not aware
I
of it?
only heard about it when I think it was in the newspapers.
So it never came to the matter never came to the
No.
attention of the board. As far as you know, did it ever come to the attention of the management
No,
in their meetings? You do not know, or
I
it
don't know.
never came?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay. All right, allow Dr. Brown to ask a follow-up question to Mr. Santa Walker.
Thanks, Chair. Mr. Wiltshire, I was trying to understand what you were saying about the credit card purchases and why it could not have been done online. I did not quite understand.
In order to shop online, you must have a credit card, isn't it?
But you use your credit card in
But
purchase?
Transport never had one.
Yes, but you use your credit
Yes,
card,
that's
so you
right.
had to travel to use your credit card?
That's right.
Why not use the same credit card online then?
There are some companies that do not accept credit cards. In addition to that, when you want
Those
to,
companies?
you have to go and check around. Sometimes when you look, you may not have them at a particular place.
So I don't know that happens in the United States, but I give you that. So you were guaranteed that you would be paid. Although we were cash-strapped, you were cash-strapped. You were guaranteed that payment. Because I find it unusual that a chairman would spend his or her own money in purchasing items for an organization.
Why you find it unusual?
I do. I won't do it, I tell you.
Well,
But for those large sums as well, we don't know real guarantee unless I had a guarantee or down payment or something.
I was there for 5 years, so I know I would get back my money. And the board had to approve it.
It just sounds a little odd to me.
Well, it's a strange world.
Mr.
Apart-
Chair, under what authority would you be of the view that the minister or any minister in question could give you instructions to spend your own money, especially verbal instructions?
Under what authority?
What authority would you imagine a minister would have to do that?
I'm going to make myself perfectly clear. I made it clear that I was going to come to the assistance of Transport Board through the use of a credit card to buy tools. The board approved it. I spoke to the minister and he said it was okay as long as I get back my money and buses are on the road.
And I
That's
understand,
all.
I understand that. I'm just saying, as the responsible chairman of the board.
I took the risk.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about that at this stage. You took a decision, but you also said, and Minister Walker referred to it today again from the notes there, that you were instructed by the minister to spend your own money to acquire parts of the Transport Board. What?
Not instructed. I spoke to him. And
He approved
said,
it?
He said, no problem, yes.
So under what authority would a minister of government in Barbados?
I don't know. I'm not too concerned with that aspect of it, quite frankly.
Okay.
I'm not interested in it.
No.
The point is that I wanted work done.
Fine,
for
I
the benefit.
got that, but we have to establish a record here.
No, you can just-
When the
that's
parts
not-
were returned to Barbados, arrived in Barbados, they were passed on to whom?
They
Would you-
were
would you-
given to the stores, Mr. Chandler.
The stores, Mr. Chandler.
He was head of stores, he would check them, and then he sign off. Sometimes he may call Bartholomew and check against the list, and then he would,
So the parts would have been turned over to stores manager, Mr. Chandler or Challoner? Chandler?
Chandler,
Challoner.
yes, right.
Challoner. And who then would have properly accounted for their presence at the transport board? Anybody in the finance area, like the financial controller, for instance?
No, that was his division, so he would have to report to the general manager.
Yeah, but you have to be repaid.
Yes, but then he would speak to the general manager, and
So it goes from Mr. Challoner
Chandler,
to the general manager,
yes, right.
not the financial controller,
No,
nor any accountant.
I don't know what happened afterwards.
So the invoices don't pass through the accounting department, they go to the general manager?
They go to the general manager with the list ticked off or whatever, and she said, this is what came in, and this is the cost.
But then how do you get paid?
I then sent in my invoice,
And your invoices would go into,
the general manager, and then down to the FC.
the invoices would pass Miss Sue, the financial controller,
It'll go through the general manager to Ms. Sue.
to Miss Sue,
That's right.
rather than go straight to Miss Sue, who is the financial controller.
No matter where she will receive them.
Would there be any situation, instance of which you were aware that Miss Sue would not have been privy to these matters, but they went from Mr. Challoner to somebody else in the accounting department? Would you be aware of any instance such as that?
No.
You're not. All right. BM 506, we were talking about BM 506.
And I don't know anything about
The
it.
first thing you heard about that is in the
I saw it in
newspaper.
newspapers.
Yeah, okay.
Where I was sold for $300, which I thought would have been scrap price, because anytime you buy a vehicle for $300 or whatever, it can't be any good. And there are
It can't be of any
buses.
use.
Yes, because there are buses I see all up in Yorkshire and St. John and the plantation lands where they have the same same transport board buses. They put in seats for the workers and chemical toilet next to them. So I know that over the years they have been purchased from transport board. So I never paid too much attention to that aspect of it.
Okay. Do you know what the circumstances were around the engaging of Transtech? How they come about the contract that they had with the transport board? Were you involved in that?
We
your board?
found that when we came.
Okay.
We don't know anything about Transtech and how they got there. It was there before we came. I think the manager may speak to that. I don't know. If she can recall.
Now, Ms. Sue said to us that on several occasions, she advised on the lack of authorization procedures and where they were not followed, or where they were not followed. Reacquisition of reconditioned transmissions, high level of costs on recurring repairs and maintenance while the bus availability was not at all increasing. And she felt it was a matter not given sufficient attention. How would you respond to that?
Can you repeat?
Ms. Sue said that she, on several occasions, pointed to a lack of authorization, use of authorization procedures for decisions made. She also made reference in that context to acquisition of reconditioned transmissions, high level of cost on recurring repairs and maintenance while the bus availability was not increasing.
Did she specify the provider where the transmissions came from?
I am sure she would have, but my concern is, did this matter generally come before the board, whoever the service provider might have been?
No,
Didn't come before the board.
it didn't. Not her concern. What came before the board was that there was a high cost.
Was Ms. Sue ever responsible for stores, as far as you're aware?
Storage. I think at one stage, but I don't think latter stages, no.
Well, apparently she was, and she was removed. Would you be aware of that?
No. That's an internal matter.
Now, this Minister Walcott made reference to acquisition of equipment from, thank you, Minister Jordan, from Pierce Furniture.
Mhm.
And it seemed to amuse your counsel, your attorney. Is it coincidence of tight name, or is there a relationship?
I don't know. Not as far as I know.
There's no relationship. Did it ever come to your attention, the attention of the board, that is, that there was some concerns about checks being issued for acquisitions not related to the operations of the board? Do you
Namely,
know of any instance of transport board checks being issued for products or services not related to transport board's operations?
you have to be more specific. I don't know. I mean, that covers a whole multitude of sins. I don't know.
Well, I don't know if it's
Yeah.
a multitude of sins, but the question is simply this. I think it's fairly clear.
No, but the thing is this, that
Is-
you're asking me a question and I don't know.
Are you aware of
I'm not aware. I don't aware. I
any
don't-
instance whatsoever that the
No.
board had to look at the matter of checks from the transport board being issued for purchases not related to transport board's operations?
no.
All right. DS Security, what service do they provide for the transport board?
Pardon me?
DS Security.
I do not know. I know who's DS Security,
Okay.
quite frankly.
The transport board entered into a contract for the supply of a bus to be used for scenic tours, a transaction which never came fully to fruition. You aware of that?
Yes,
And you know what the status is of that matter? When
I do not
the
know.
board left, when the board admitted office, ended its tenure?
I think there was money outstanding. Some money
The bus
outstanding.
was supplied?
The bus wasn't supplied, no. Because I think that it was $50,000 or $52,000 was paid on account, and then they had to, Transport Board had to pay the balance, and
The balance wasn't paid and the bus wasn't provided.
That's right.
Were you aware of a high level of discrepancies on invoices coming from UCAL?
Yes, we had a meeting, and they were trying to sort it out because they were charging miscellaneous items, and we had asked them to provide what you consider miscellaneous, because miscellaneous covered a multitude of things, and sometimes the miscellaneous items used to be high in cost. Then there was, I think, the hours, the cost per hour, because it went from $70 to $90. And I must point out that Sir Roy, he is the major mover and shaker in that UCAL. So at the time I left, that was not resolved because I think Transport Board was saying that they owe them, I think, 11 million. UCAL was saying that they owe them 20 million or something like it, as far as I can recall.
Was the matter resolved?
No,
The matter was not resolved.
it was not. We were not there that length of time to get it resolved.
Barbadians would not want to hear any statement to the effect that 25% of the board's buses in service and on the roads would have been defective. That's Is that a correct?
25% of the buses?
Does that represent an accurate position? 25% of buses on the road defective.
I'm not too sure because I'm not there right now.
At the
Then
time.
again, I don't know
At that time.
at that time.
During the tenure of the board which you led, was this a matter ever addressed by the board, the level of defective buses on the roads of Barbados?
It was.
It was a matter of concern?
It was about to be addressed, or was it being addressed by the special project? The special project was responsible for servicing the buses, making parts, installing, transmissions and new parts, etc. And there was a planned maintenance program whereby buses used to be pulled off the road and, checked. Now, what the specialist, the consultant did, he brought a new dimension to the servicing the buses because they were not properly serviced. And as a result of that, he saved a number of engines because an engine costs $55,000.
Yeah, but what would have been the board's dictates to the management if the concern defective buses on the road commuting, carrying commuters? If that reaches the extent where 25% are defective, if the board is concerned, what would the board have been saying to management on that?
What would have been, but if the buses are on the road and they are defective, we are saying that they should be repaired. Where are you going to get the parts from when Simpson close down your account? And it goes back to one problem, money. We can talk as much as we like.
So you're not dealing with a situation where there is mismanagement. There is not a situation where there's a callousness of attitude as to the welfare of the traveling public. It comes down to an issue of expediency. We don't have the money and we have to transport people, so we put the buses on the road anyhow, to the extent that 1 out of every 4 is defective.
Who came up with that figure? I don't know.
I'm asking what was represented to the board.
I'm not sure what was represented to the board. All we used to get from quality assurance is that there were buses which had to be repaired. There were buses at Transtech, at UCAL, and we are unable to put them on the road because some of them cannot even pass inspection and that kind of thing. And we were trying our utmost to get these things addressed. So to say that we were careless in respect of not getting buses for the traveling public, I mean,
I wasn't saying that. I was asking.
No.
I was asking to the extent that there was a high number of defective buses in service and on the road. Did that reflect, as far as the board was concerned, did that reflect on the part of management, a callous attitude or a sense of expediency that, look, notwithstanding the fact that the buses are defective, we have to put them on the road because we need to move the public from point A to point B?
I think it's the latter one, expediency.
Expediency.
That's right. Because people used to be down at the bus stand for 2 and 3 hours.
So it would have been the view of the board then that management felt a strong sense of expediency to put defective buses on the roads to transport the Barbadian public because of lack of money.
Yeah, when you say defective, defective, you can, that covers.
I doubt defective in this context means that the indicator isn't working.
But the bus can still drive.
Sorry?
The bus will still be able to drive. You can't.
But that's what I'm saying. I don't think defective in this case means that indicator is not working.
So what do you mean by defective then? It covers a multitude of things.
How would you respond to the statement that there was poor maintenance and yet payments were made to UCAL despite
poor maintenance?
Poor maintenance, poor service.
Oh, poor service.
by UCAL, and yet they were paid.
I think that would have been the responsibility of quality assurance, because
But that came to the attention of the board as well?
it did come to the attention of the board. We spoke to the head of quality assurance, spoke to the deputy, and there was some mix-up. One was saying that when a bus came back from UCAL, it was inspected. The other one said not in every case that it was inspected. So there was some confusion between them, because the two of them were not on, more or less even keel.
The two of whom?
Pardon me?
The two of whom?
The head and the deputy.
The,
Head of quality assurance and the
that's
deputy.
Mr. Codrington,
Codrington and Mr. Rowe.
Mr.
Rowe. And then there was another guy who he used to inspect only what was repaired. In other words, what I, on hindsight, which I don't want to go back to, if a bus comes out from UCAL, you should inspect what was done, but then you should carry through with your full inspection then before you put it on the road, because something could have been slacking off or not put on, and then when you're looking for that part, it is not there.
Any other question? Comment? Any other question or comment? Minister Husbands?
Mr. Wiltshire, I believe Mr. Bartholomew, the consultant that you hired, was there up to the year 2017, correct?
Yes, that's right.
And you indicated that he had generated savings for the transport board.
That's right.
How much were those savings?
I think it were 4-point-something million.
4 million?
Yeah, 4.5, I think it was.
Okay. We've been asking questions in relation to the way in which the transport board was managed. We've been asking questions in relation to how the board saw its function as watching over the activities of the transport board to ensure that policy is carried out and that the board was properly run. And the reason why I say this, because I'm not really satisfied with your answers of you don't know, it wasn't anything to do with you, the manager, general manager will have to say that didn't come to your attention. And I'll tell you why. The financial state of the transport board was such an issue. You stated to this committee that the Minister of Finance was concerned and said that he had a problem with giving you more resources. You indicated that resources were so tight that you made decisions to purchase more expensive things locally because of having access to credit rather than find the resources to be able to buy things from overseas that were in many cases 200-300% cheaper. You also said that you implemented the project with Mr. Bartholomew because the problem was so great, and that this took the attention of Mr. Bartholomew and the board paying very close attention to this project to help right the finances and the operations of the board in order to get back on track. The attention was so minute that you and the team went to Brazil to personally inspect and negotiate parts to make things cheaper, that you paid such minute attention to the happenings at the board that you took your personal credit and used it to be able to purchase supplies on behalf of the board, and the willingness to undertake to wait until they could pay you. So my contention, sir, is that this issue of what was happening at the board was something that commanded the attention of the board. You have a project that is supposed to save money, and you've indicated it is $4 million. This was in 2017. I want to draw your attention to minutes for the beginning of the year 2018, January 2018, that sought to provide the board with a review of what was happening with the finances of the Transport Board up until January 2018. It reads that there was a deficit in the board, at the board, where the revenue collected year to date was 22.8 million. 22.8 million, which compared to the anticipated revenue of 32 million. So you were 10 million below your projections for revenue. This was a 30% decline. But the expenditure year to date was 62 million. $14 million more than you collected. And presiding over a situation, a gap as wide as that, after bringing in Mr. Bartholomew, who was supposed to right the situation, it would seem to me that that particular project failed miserably in achieving the objective that it needed to achieve. The minutes also say that the reason for the reduction in revenue was due to low bus availability, despite all these efforts by Mr. Bartholomew, despite all the monies that were spent. And because of the low bus availability, there was a consequent decline in fares and charters. And therefore, the Transport Board would have found itself with a noose around its neck in a vicious spiral, which as a board and as a management, you all failed to take the very necessary decisions to be able to deal with it. Those decisions being, if you have expenditure of 62 million because you're busy buying goods or sticking with suppliers that you're paying 10 times more than what you can get an item for from overseas. To me, that is a failure in y'all's duty as a board in dealing with the affairs of the Transport Board. Again, I put it to you that had you put on paper the difference between what you were spending and earning and what you could have earned and what you could have saved had you made the switch, I would find it hard to believe, but you would have to tell me, that a Minister of Finance looking at the difference it could make to assist the board to switch its suppliers, I think that the continuance of using the local suppliers at those exorbitant prices is what has led to the failure of the Transport Board to really turn its situation around. And I feel that you need to provide the public of Barbados with a full, open explanation why, in the face of these types of figures, you could still find it appropriate to continue on the road that y'all were on, despite having that project with Mr. Bartholomew.
And I have, Okay. I think that you are looking at statistics and you're analyzing the statistics and coming here to ask me about why is it that we continue X or Y when we should be getting rid of local providers and bringing in transmissions in particular from overseas. That's right? That's what you're saying? All I'm saying to you, I think the financial controller came in here and she said that the providers were able to hold strain until they got money. Remember that? I read her transcript. She also said with overseas suppliers, you had to get the cash up front, and they did not have it. And that is the reason why this particular provider was used. I did not know anything about hiring him. I only came and found him. I think it is the financial controller who will be able to best answer those questions. You have all the statistics, and as I said earlier, 2 weeks ago, my job is to come to Transport Board once a month. I do not work at Transport Board, so I'm not familiar with everything at the Transport Board.
I'll just close with this, Mr. Wiltshire. The reason why I find that truly unacceptable was the fact that you had that laser focus on having a special project to try to get this situation under control. And despite doing that, despite hiring Mr. Bartholomew, that program failed. Because you're asking this committee and you're asking the people of Barbados that because you could get credit from local suppliers, 50 transmissions, which would have, at $25,000, would have cost you $1.25 million, and that you could rack up that bill and pay that, because you still have to pay, you still have to find the 1.2 million. You're asking the people of Barbados to believe that it was easier and more prudent to do that than to spend $5,000 on 50 transmissions, which would only cost you $250,000. I'm not sure that that is an acceptable explanation, and I don't really think that it is. Let me put it from a personal perspective. I would feel very uncomfortable to sit on a board or to be a manager in a situation like this and justify that decision in the light of its consequences to the board, to Barbados, to the commuters. I really would. Thank you.
Before you go,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I never told you that I was in agreement with it. I told you that Mrs. Sue said that. I told you that, so don't worry and say that I feel comfortable doing it. I did not. So get that straight. I did not, and I told you do not micromanage, and information coming in was very scarce. For example, we did not know 126 transmissions were purchased. We did not know. I also pointed out to this committee that the project which you are hammering would have made an inroads into the coffers of the transport board by buttressing the coffers in the extent of what, $3 million, $4 million, but the project was sabotaged. I remember seeing that distinctly, and I show you photographs of not transmissions,
Gloves.
gloves. You also what do you call it? They want to go what?
Brushes.
Radiators. Lots of radiators. And that's what caused the project to fail, because buses were breaking down. They were not being serviced properly. It was sabotage at the highest level. And I made it sure I pointed out them to this committee. But you're coming back now and telling me it just failed because I had more or less a tunnel vision. That is incorrect. And what you're saying is from a subjective point of view, management point of view, and I will rest my case.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wiltshire. We have held you a bit over time, and that, I think, would take care of what you're presenting to the committee for this afternoon. So I want to thank you and Mr. Pierce.
Thank you.
Committee, we take a break for a few minutes to allow for the usual sanitizing.